teaches Swahili language, literature, and culture here at Stanford. Dr. Mohochi holds a Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, and PhD in Sociology in Swahili and Swahili Language Attitudes from Egerton University in Njoro, Kenya. After teaching at Egerton for 9 years, he moved to St. Lawrence University in New York. He taught Swahili there for 2 years before coming to Stanford in 2006. Dr. Mohochi is the founder and chairman of the Laurenti Mohochi Educational Foundation, or LMEF, in the Kuria district of Kenya. And because he grew up and attended primary and secondary school in this area, he understands the local conditions and challenges to educational attainment. The title of his talk today is Fulfilling a Dream, LMEF's Contribution to the Improvement of Education in Kuria, Kenya. So let's give a warm karibu sana to Dr. Mohochi.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Pamela, for that introduction, and thank you all for coming to my presentation. I say my name is Sangai Mohochi. I come from southwestern Kenya in a place called Kuria district, and my home happens to be next to a school. I will indicate in my presentation how that happened. I am told that I had to be taken to school earlier than would have been the case because I became a nuisance to my parents. I became a nuisance in the sense that any time students passed by going to school, because they would pass outside our home, I kept crying, wanting to go to school too. I'm sure at that time I didn't know the value of education, but probably I was attracted by the school uniform which the kids had. Obviously, growing up in the village, maybe you had one pair of shorts, one pair of pants, and so to us, I believe that uniform was very attractive. Well, it's good that it happened because I got that opportunity, and ever since I have been in education, and it's education that I'll talk to you about today. What I intend to do today is to basically talk to you about the dream. And in the dream, I want to talk about what that dream is, whose dream it was or it is, and talk about the foundation that is working towards realizing that dream, and then ultimately talk about how you could assist us in realizing that dream. However, before doing that, I'll just give some basic information about Kenya and Kuria, information that I think may help us contextualize the situation that I'm talking about today. And now it does not want to move. But we shall make it move. Okay, Kenya's population was estimated to be 36.1 by the year 2006. But like was mentioned last week, the figures, depending on the sources, are a little bit different. But we have a census this August, so we shall have a better idea. I believe it would be around 38 million, 39 or 40 million. And it's divided into 8 administrative provinces, which are further divided into 194 districts. I will indicate why this is important, because Kuria is one such district. It's one of the 194. The number keeps on increasing because the politicians do it at times for their own selfish ends. Now, one thing about the division is that there is a lot of disparity in terms of the level of economic, societal development. And this is because, to a large extent, the numbers really determine how seriously you are taken in the national scheme of things. So that if you are few, then you really are of very little consequence, and they can easily forget about you as they worry about the bigger communities which have votes when it comes to elections. At independence, Kenya identified those three as the main enemies, and therefore all our development goals were meant to be geared towards tackling them. However, those of you who have studied Kenya or who have visited Kenya know that 45 years down the line, very little, if any, mileage has been covered. There still is a lot that needs to be done in those three basic areas that were identified then. With regard to education, there are some indicators there of the amount, at least the level of seriousness that the government gives education in Kenya. And so quite a bit of resources are directed towards education. However, still the problem remains unsolved. You know, for instance, we have a very big number of students who are school-aged students, but who are not in school because of lack of resource and several other factors that come into play. The transition rate, you know, from elementary, what we call here elementary to high school, is also one that, to be honest, is not very, very appealing, so to speak. As you can see, both in rich areas and in the poor areas. So there are quite a number of students who finish their entire education life after grade 8. The Kenya Certificate of Primary Education, that is the exam that determines you know, who goes to high school, to secondary education. And so over the years, the story has always been so many people doing the examinations, but very few managing to get places to go to high school. For instance, in 2008, we see that this year, 250,000 who did the exam last year are not in high school now, because there are no enough spaces for them. And the same for the university entrance exam, which is done at the end of the high school, 4-year high school educational cycle. So like in 2007, out of 276,000 candidates, only 16,000 will join the universities. Over the years, it has been 12, because that is basically the capacity of the public university. Now it has gone up to 16. But when you talk of 16 out of 70 who did qualify, obviously still there is a very big number that does not get an opportunity to proceed with their education. The next year will even be worse, because those who did the exam last year will be joining next year. And so out of 350,000, 79 did get the minimum university entry grade. But obviously, if you're talking about 16, then that means 60 will not get that opportunity. And so the issue of access to education, access to space, you know, an opportunity to go to school is still one that Kenya as a nation needs to grapple with. Now, that is the national outlook, but like I mentioned before, this situation is very different in different regions. There are certain regions which have a better you know, situation because of maybe the leadership, because of how close they are to the national leadership and other factors, or because of the academic, economic activities they are in, which enable them then to afford to take their students to school. But that is not the case in Kuria. And I'm not saying here that Kuria is the only such community. Indeed, there are several other communities in Kenya with similar situations, and elsewhere too. But I will concentrate on Kuria, where I am from, which I understand pretty well. Now that is where Kuria is located in East Africa. As you see, it is in both Kenya and Tanzania, with the majority being in Tanzania and around a third in Kenya. The Kuria were, you know, the estimates put it at 215,000 by last year. Some people argue that it's more than that, others argue it's not exactly around that figure, but those are the figures that are in the records. Traditionally, they were agro-pastoral.